Us on all our socials on TikTok at Z Multimedia, LinkedIn at Z Multimedia, YouTube, ZTV, IG, X, and Facebook at ZFMGH. Do enjoy this video.
Generally, and we're asking a very important question whether we are building an economy or we are exporting our wealth. Are we actually building Ghana's economy, or we are just getting better at exporting the wealth that we have? Because when you look at gold, cocoa, oil, strong export numbers, strong global demand on paper, things that actually look fine. But the deeper question is what those numbers are really doing inside the economy. Are they transforming industries? Are they creating long-term value? Are they or are they just giving us some temporary relief until the next global price shift? And so this one, that's what we are unpacking with Professor Patrick Assuming. He is an economist at the University of Ghana, and he joins us over the phone lines for this conversation. Prof, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to listeners. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for making time to join us, Prof. I'm going to start very direct this morning, and my very first question to you is that where do we stand when we look at our economy today? I mentioned gold, cocoa, oil. Are we actually building wealth, or we are simply extracting and exporting value?
That's a loaded and complicated question. Let's see how we're going to try and break it down.
Sure.
Break it up. So if you start from our exports, our export base, for instance, you see the most recent data that the Bank of Ghana put out in May. So you see we have our traditional exports. That will be gold, cocoa, oil, and then we have other exports. It's other exports that we call non-traditional exports. That's where you see some of the things that we are adding value to. So even to be fair, the cocoa exports will include some that are semi-processed. I think that over the last year and a half, there's the common discussion is that the economy has stabilized. Some have gone as far as saying we're on the path for creating wealth and all. But that's all well and good. I think, there's no mistaking that our export has grown. When you look at our balance of payment account, which looks at our transactions in goods and services and assets with the rest of the world, indeed, since 2017, our trade balance has been in the positive. That means we've exported, the value of what we've exported has exceeded what we have imported for since 2017. But in 2025 and 2024, 2025, that gap, especially 2025, the exports has exceeded the import by far. And the other thing you have to look at is that, so that is that side, on the trade side.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the growth numbers themselves, you see that in the last 5 years or so, almost every year, the actual growth have exceeded the projected growth. Part of that reason, people will say, is because we are under an IMF grant, and therefore our growth tends to be more, the growth target tends to be conservative. But not just that, the actual growth itself has progressively done well. So you see, so there's that fact. Exports are doing well, the growth is doing well. And yet, when you look at some other data, I think this year we've seen some release from the Ghana Statistical Service about growth in multidimensional poverty in some sense.
Yeah.
We've also seen data on increased food vulnerability. So you put all of this together, then you are saying, why is the macro looking better? Why is the export, the trade balance account telling us that things are doing well? Why is the growth number telling us that the economy is growing? And yet, if you look at the micro level data, you begin to see there's some disconnect. And I think this is where you start to unpack your question about, wealth creation and all.
Yeah. Very important. Prof,
You,
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So, there are many different ways to pass up, what the economy is doing and how the economy is growing.
Mm.
One way is to look at which subsectors are growing. Because when we say the economy is growing, if you just dig up minerals and you export them, you are producing more economic activity, so the growth will pick up.
Mm.
If that activity is controlled mostly by, or is owned mostly by foreigners, therefore the proceeds mostly go to foreigners, it will still show that the GDP is growing.
Yeah.
We have the formal sector and the informal sector, and you see that a lot of Ghanaians are in the informal sector. The informal sector is big. Now, even in the period where we say the economy is growing, you realize that the overall growth is higher than the growth of the informal sector. So when you put all of these together, you begin to see why it appears that we are creating more wealth, but majority of the people, and some micro data is telling us that many people are not better off as you expect. So I think the headline number will tell you the economy is doing well.
Mm.
If you begin to disaggregate it, then you see why, in spite of this, people are complaining, because there's so much disconnect, and we have created so many enclave economies. Enclave economy, if you take the gold for instance, over the last 1.5 years, we've seen that gold production is doing well.
Mm.
But do you see any other subsectors of the economy being pulled along? The answer is no.
That's a question.
Because we allow gold to sit alone. We take the thing from the ground and then we just export it. So if we are not directly involved, it is not going to pull anybody. But if we are doing more value addition, if we are doing more processing, and we are doing more of the gold locally, then it means that we have people who are supplying so smelters, or we have people who are, even you can even talk about blacksmiths who are converting more gold into jewelry and doing other things with it.
Mm.
So if we had more linkages within the economy, then we see that when one sector is growing, others are not growing. We've had this also before, when oil was doing very well, but it was still an enclave. So the oil doing well is not pulling any other subsectors along. That's because we have allowed it to become an enclave economy, and that means it's isolated and disconnected from the rest of the economy. And I think this is where we begin to see, yes, there's some wealth being created. Where is the wealth going? And how is that affecting ordinary Ghanaians?
Mm. Right, Prof. We want to look at our trading as a country and how we focus extensively on just export dependency, or maybe as we depend on exports generally, specifically raw materials. But I want to know, so from whatever you've said so far, is it that we are confusing economic activity with economic transformation? In fact, are they the same?
Well, anything that you do that earns income is an economic activity.
Mm.
Anything you do that earns you a living. But when we say the economy is being transformed, generally, economies like ours, we start primarily agrarian. That means we are mostly agric, and even the agric, we are not upgrading to the agribusiness and then value addition end. So when we say the economy is being transformed, we want to see first the base structure changing. We can talk about the base structure changing from less dependence on agric into more value addition in terms of manufacturing in particular, and then into services. So that's one area we want to see transformation. But it starts with agric because you don't say you are going to manufacture. What are you going to manufacture? You don't want to set up manufacturing plants and you are importing the inputs.
Yeah.
So you don't want to set up a factory and then you are struggling to feed it with inputs. So I think this is where we always start with investment in agric, making sure that agric productivity is rising.
Mm.
So we are generating more than sufficient quantity of food in particular. And then generating sufficient quantity of raw materials to feed manufacturing. Now, manufacturing itself, when it gets advanced, then you get to more services.
Yeah.
Because then you need to think about sales, you need to think about marketing, you need to think about transportation, you need to think about internet services. Because when you have manufactured, what do you do with it? So it looked to me that so it's more, the transformation should start from increased productivity, more manufacturing, and then along the side, get to higher end manufacturing and services. Today, when you look at Ghanaian, the structure of Ghanaian economy, services is the biggest contributor. However, we never went through the stage where we added value.
Yeah.
It's like we jumped that crucial step. So we don't really have much manufacturing, but we are doing more services. So that is one aspect of the transformation that we are not realizing, because when you are doing more manufacturing and value addition, this is where you see you generate more wealth.
Yeah.
Because if you let's take cocoa, if you just export the raw cocoa, the person who take the cocoa and convert it into chocolate or other things, they are going to get more value than you who exported the raw cocoa, even though there will be no processing without your cocoa. And so I think the fact that we haven't allowed we haven't seen the transformation into manufacturing is a problem. The other aspect, especially when you talk about the macro side, is that the formal and informal issue. So there are many people who are producing, many people who are earning, but it's very difficult to capture activities taking place in the informal sector and to be able to tell sufficiently what their contribution is. So, one part of the transformation that we also have to see is that more businesses or more economic activity being generated in a formal setting.
Yeah.
What that means is that it's easy to capture who is doing what, who is doing here. If even the government wants to support them, it's easier to do. But it also helps government in mobilizing direct revenue. Because the government struggles to tell who is generating what economic activity and therefore struggles to even tax them, then your tax base is very small. So it's a few people that you keep taxing and taxing and taxing. That's not to say the informal sector don't pay tax, because there's indirect tax where when you buy goods and services, you pay them.
That's true.
Whether you are in formal sector or you are in the informal sector, you are buying goods and services and you are paying. But when you compare us with advanced countries, that's where you see in advanced countries there's more reliance on direct taxes.
Yeah.
So taxes on income and property than indirect taxes where you keep taxing goods and services. Because when you keep taxing production, at some point, the disincentive to find ways of avoiding the tax become a problem. So the transformation that you described is that we need to begin to see more value addition and then get into the higher end services. And let me comment about the services. We said that the Ghanaian economy is dominated by services, but even the service itself, service comes in categories. There's wholesale trade and retail trade. It's part of a service. Then there's the ICT. It's part of a service. There's banking or the financial system. It's a service. You notice that, or even repair works. It's also a service. But you see that the higher value addition is not in wholesale and resale trade. The higher value services is not trade and repairs of our household goods. No. The higher value is in the financial system, is in ICT. And indeed, since the COVID, ICT has been the highest growing subsector in the Ghanaian economy. But then again, who owns the majority of those assets, those sectors? If you take ICT, for instance, what fraction is Ghanaian owned? And then you begin to see that even though ICT has been doing well, perhaps the benefits that goes in terms of the income that comes to Ghanaians are relatively limited. So the transformation has to happen in many aspects.
Right. So, Prof. So, if you look at it very well, what is the reason behind our failure to, or our interest in, first of all, the economic activity, and we're recording strong export earnings, and specifically in terms of our traditional exports and all of that, and we are all excited about it. Why are we very much interested in those things? Compared to we actually saying that this is what we are doing in terms of value addition and this is what we are getting. It looks like we are excited when we get the little gains compared to how much more there is for us to be able to amass if we're doing certain things right.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I think there's no shortage of uh, plans in manifestos or electioneering plans on. Look, if you take the last, say, 5 election cycles and you read the manifestos of the two major political parties, you get a clear sense that they know what has to be done. Because the ideas that they write there tell you that everything has to start with agriculture and productivity, but we ultimately have to go into more value addition and not be happy with just taking minerals out of the ground and just exporting them raw or exporting raw material. So it is clear. It seems like when people get into power, that is where they struggle to implement all the fine ideas that they put down. Some will argue that part of it is we don't have a national long-term strategy that both sides subscribe to. Because if you have that national long-term strategy, everybody knows this is where we want to get to. These are the pathways. One party might say, maybe I'll lean more towards this side, or I'll lean more towards that side. But we know that ultimately, we all want to go in that same direction. I think that is an issue. We had the NDPC put up I think 30 or 40-year development plan.
I think 40.
But the next administration said they don't believe in that. And then, so it means that, if you don't have the long-term plan, because the transformation that we are talking about, they don't take place in a short time. If you look at our economic history, the immediate post-independence transformation that we saw under our first president is because he always had the 7-year and 5-year development plans and a strategy on where we want to go, how we want to get there, with clear benchmarks measuring at various points. We don't have that again. And because our political economy is now around mostly 4-year cycle. So even when people have ideas that you need maybe 6 years for it to really come to fruition, people are looking for easy, some of the easiest things they can do. So that they will be able to show some short-term gains, even if it comes at the expense of the long term. So if you look at what has happened over the last year, for instance, it's clear that the gold has been an important part of how the Bank of Ghana has managed the currency and the price stability. But you have to ask, what's the point of stockpiling gold and building those reserves when there are younger Ghanaians who have no jobs? So we say that, so you pile up the gold and they are sitting somewhere. And then you are asking, well, if we decided to add value, won't we employ some of the young people? Because the economy has been growing, but we are not creating jobs. And that is why there's all those disconnects. So yes, it helps us in the short term to say, well, we've acquired so much reserves, and it helps us to stabilize the city. But we have to question, so we are stabilizing at the expense of what? And exactly how are we stabilizing? If we had an economy that is so diversified and is so there are so many strong linkages, and we are adding value to primary commodities, then you wouldn't need 5 months import cover in terms of your gross international reserves, because it means that you have diversified sources of foreign exchange earning.
Yeah.
And that would mean that when there's a shock anywhere, you are not relying on only one thing. We know that the primary commodities that we export, their prices are more volatile. But if you diversify more into value addition, those ones, the prices tend to be more stable even when global economies suffer shocks. And then because you are diversified, you are not relying on only one source or only a few sources. Then in that case, you don't even need 5 months import cover, because you know that the economy that you built is so resilient that even when shocks come. But I think we have taken the strategy that, okay, let's pile up the reserves. You look at that, the strategy with let's pile up the reserves using the primary exports.
Exactly. Prof, not to cut you, I've listened to the Bank of Ghana speak a lot of times, and Bank of Ghana governor speak a lot of times, and clearly, if you listen to him, it appears that, I mean, there's so much confidence in our 5 months import cover and all of those things. That is where the interest really is, and that is just to agree with what you are saying.
Yes, even though, I mean, credit to them, I think the last time I heard him speak, I heard him saying that, oh, we need to add value. I said, okay, great, that's good to hear. Because, if you take, for instance, our current reserve position, part of it is because we have stockpiled so much gold, and gold prices are at record high.
Yeah.
But we know that they won't stay there for long.
Forever.
So if you are adding more value to the gold, you even have higher reserves than just keeping the raw gold.
Yeah.
And then it gives you more insurance against volatility in global markets than what we currently have. So I think this is where we need to bring some balance.
Absolutely. Let's go beyond Ghana. It appears to me that, I mean, many resource-rich countries actually struggle with long-term development. And I know you economists sometimes call it a paradox. Why does that happen?
So there are many reasons why it happens. So when you have so much natural resource, there's the tendency to focus on, the extraction. And then it generates what we call rent. So people devote energy fighting over control of those rents.
Yeah.
Rather than committing rather than building long-term wealth around it. So there's that side. The other side is that, look, it's much easier to just they give you very quick returns. Like you can just go and mine, and then in a short space of time, once the mining starts, in a short space of time you are generating. And because those are mostly tradable, they are things that you can export, and it's easy for us to just export them. The incentive for exporting them raw and getting the rewards are much more attractive. So you see that where some of the, especially in the African continent, some of the resource-rich countries, there's also a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
That's because there are a lot of fights over to control the access to the resource. But even where there's not much conflict, you realize that it becomes a cheap source or a quick way of earning something, and we tend to focus more on that rather than thinking long term on what we can do. So that's a problem that many people call Dutch disease. That there's something that is easy for you to focus. You become more attracted to now we have an easy source of income. Let's focus on that rather than building a more sustainable base. But other countries, non-African countries that have done that. If you look at what the wealth that Scandinavian countries have built out of their oil resource, they've gone into petrochemicals, they've gone into additional services that comes with owning those rich oil resources. That is why we haven't. We haven't. But also part of, in some sense, where we have come from. If you look at what colonialism has done, many of our colonial masters, they started by making sure that we are exporting the raw material so that they will process to feed their own industries.
Prof, we've moved past
We've
past
been, yeah,
colonialism.
we've gotten out of colonialism for how many decades now? We've decided that, it looked like we replaced the colonial masters with local bourgeoisie who also want to benefit from the colonial arrangement rather than making the transformation that is required. So, of course, that's only a history. We just have not worked in changing the course of that history.
Prof, you talk about the Scandinavian countries, and the reason you give for Ghana specifically early on is about the political will to do the right thing, and also how the term is short and all of that. Comparing that to the Scandinavian countries, do they also have this short-term thing and they've been able to overcome it, or what exactly? I mean, what exactly is the difference? Because I know that most of those countries are also doing 4 years, 4-year term. So it appears to me that is not exactly the issue. What do you have to say, Prof?
Yeah, but I think that at least when they started doing mining and the world as it was when they started is different from the world as it is when we started. Because they were some of the early producers in that industry, so they will set a pace. And let's not forget, they didn't get to where they are now. So we only observe where they are now, but we have to understand that they've also had some history. They've come from somewhere. Some of the struggles that we have gone through, it's not like they didn't go through it. But through years of learning, that's how come they've gotten where we are. But I think what is disappointing is that we don't need to go and relearn and unlearn. We've seen how people have done it. We just have to learn from it. So I think our refusal to learn, and it all boils down to leadership. Leadership have to have a clear vision and not always seek short-term gain. And, commit to that vision, make sure that you rally people around and then implement the vision. So just these short-term visions and looking at short-term gain, that hasn't helped us. We've had very good plans, things that look great on paper, but that when it's implementation, when it's time to implement, then you begin to see the bottlenecks coming, and then suddenly things that look great on paper, we struggle to implement them.
Yes. Prof, let's look at a Scandinavian country like Norway. I was using them as an example when I was doing my business brief a while ago. That country is 121 years old, gained full independence around 1905, thereabout. And they've been able to, as it were, take advantage of their natural resources, and they are doing well. Comparing them to what we are doing currently, do you think that we are on the right path? That in maybe 100 years, or maybe not 100 years, maybe 40 years from now, we can actually say that, we've also been able to do it because it took Norway that long to be able to get to where they are. And we are not only looking at their current successes to compare them to Ghana, but we know that we're also on the path, and one day we'll get there.
Well, it's difficult to say that we are on that path, Barry. The thing is that if we took them 120 years, we have 120 years of history. So we don't have to also take 120 years. But what plans have we had for our oil wealth? Don't forget that we started the oil started flowing, I believe, 2010, or in full year 2011. We've had 15 years, right?
Yeah.
Now, can you pinpoint any specific, where is the oil wealth? the oil proceeds that we've had, where is it? And what is the plan for using it? How are you using it? So, and even if you take 5 years ago, or say 6 years ago, when the COVID started, we've been mining for 10 years then. We had the Heritage Fund and the Stabilization Fund and all. What were they able to help us in any way? And since then, have we even replenished it? But beyond just putting wealth somewhere, how have you made sure that the oil that we are producing, they are, it has support services? How have you made sure that those support services are, are generating additional jobs outside of the direct mining for Ghanaians? We haven't followed any clear strategy.
Yeah.
So I think that with what we are doing, we can do this for 100 years, and then we won't catch up. Because we don't have a clear strategy. Yes, we've had a local content requirement, but if you look at the local content law, Ghanaians, help other, some of the foreign businesses to circumvent the law, what the law is intended to do. So I'm afraid that I haven't seen anything that suggests that we are going to be like them. Of course, we also have to take into consideration our oil reserves are not as much as theirs. So that's always something to note. We don't have as much. And I think in the last few years, we've seen that our oil production has even been going down. But that's not here. That is neither here nor there. The point is that this is the resource we didn't have before. It become a new resource.
Yeah.
We have been making more of it. So I'm afraid that from where I sit, I don't see the plan. I think that is where it all has to start with a plan that people will look at it and say, oh yeah, this is believable. If we follow this, it may be long, but eventually we get there. We don't have it.
So it appears we are just managing the whole situation, and we just keep moving forward instead of actually working on something concrete to build on. Prof, let me just our time is almost up, so let me wrap up. But maybe as we wrap up, what can we do to say that indeed we are, to actually say that what would need to change really for you to confidently say that we are on the right path?
Well, we need to have a strategy. You always need a strategy, and the strategy is something that should not be dependent on who is in power and who is not in power. It has to be a national strategy that we all believe in. That, okay, this is what we feel we should do with our natural resources, whether it is gold, whether it is oil. We should just have a clear strategy. In recent times, I'm sure you followed the discussion about what to do with expiring gold concessions.
Yeah.
And whether the question is that what strategy have we had in place to prepare Ghanaian-owned mines, or yes, mining companies owned by Ghanaians to be ready to take over? You can't just wait until it's time for renewal and say, oh, it should be Ghanaian-owned.
It should be Ghanaian-owned, yeah.
How many, what is the scale? What is the technology? What's the financial resource? So you plan for it and you say, okay, in 50 years, if you are renewing today, you say that, okay, by the next renewal, we want Ghanaians to have reached this stage where they're able to take this kind of small mines.
Yeah.
Then, if it's manpower needs, you start planning for it. If it's experience, technical expertise, you start planning for it. You start investing. So that by the time you get there, you are ready. But we are just there, and things are just flowing as we are going with the flow. And then suddenly we get to a point and say, it would be great to have more Ghanaians.
Yeah.
It's great that at least we have one, that the diamond mines that have gone to the Ghanaian business.
Yeah.
But you have to question whether even that is just somebody who has privately invested and ready themselves and prepared themselves, or it is the state that directly had a strategy to groom Ghanaian mining companies to be ready to take over. So if we don't have that, it's difficult to see how you are going to take off. And that should be insulated from the political distance. In some sense, you know, and in some sense, it's great to hear that, the person who is now owning the Ghanaian mine, even though we know his family relation with the president. But from what you have read, it looks like some of the intervention has started by the other party, which is good to hear. But you need to say there's something national. Then you can do your politics about. There are some things we shouldn't be playing politics with.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think once we're able to have a strategy that is we all believe in, and we all agree that regardless of who is in power, this is where we want to go, then we will be on the way.
All right, Prof. Thank you very much. Maybe your final words, and then we can go in terms of specifically. Maybe I'll just turn it into a question. So, if we specifically wanted to shift from exporting raw materials to building a more resilient economy, what do you think beyond a strategy? What are some maybe three priorities? If you can just mention, you don't have to explain. Maybe just mention some three priorities that we have to do, and who should be responsible for that, and where we can start from.
Linkages. So you create the economy such that if you say, for instance, we want to support domestic production of rice, and we say we are going to do the enclave, the water enclave as part of the 24-hour economy. You make sure that it never happens that the farmer buys, the farmer produces, and they are struggling to buy.
Right.
So so you have a strategy that says, okay, now any state entity procuring any rice is buying local. It's not up for discussion.
Okay.
You shouldn't have a situation we had last year. Then the policy should be mutually reinforcing and consistent. You can't say you want to support local production, and then you have a policy that is strengthening the currency and making it easy for people to import. That's just not. So you can't have one policy working against the other. In the previous administration, we have a situation where we are trying to do 1D, 1F, and then we want to do benchmark values. That lowered the prices of imports.
Yeah.
Then, so what are we trying to do? So I think having the strategy itself should be contain policies that are mutually reinforcing. So we don't have it's not like we are doing one thing here, it's looking left, and the other thing is doing right. No, it's looking right. No, that should not be happening. And then, so you deliberately create linkages. So if you say you are going to boost agri productivity, a country that, excuse me to say, we are dying at a filth. These days, when you go to advanced countries, filth is a source of wealth.
A resource.
Because people are converting them into electricity production.
Yeah.
They are converting them into organic manure. But how can you build a strategy that is based on agriculture strategy that is based on importing chemical fertilizers when you have what it takes to produce them, or especially when you have those raw materials that are already a source of a health hazard? So I think this is the kind of linkages we mean, so that when the crop sector is doing well, it is also it is feeding on what you are getting from the animal side. So in poultry, the droppings are used to produce organic manure to reinforce the production of crops. So these are just examples of small things you can do to create those linkages. So when one is growing, it's pulling the other side along.
Prof, thank you very much. These are all ideas that, leadership knows about. I hope that they are listening this morning, and maybe this will actually turn some things around in their minds and in their hearts. But Prof, I'm really grateful that you made time to join me this morning. It's been a very good conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a good morning.
All right. Thank you. Right. So that was Professor Patrick Assuming from the University of Ghana. He's an economist and he's giving us a lot of ideas. We're speaking extensively about, the situation in this country and whether we are actually on the right path in building an economy, or we're just, as it were, managing resources that we have and exporting our wealth to other countries. And the line, or the point is clear that there's so much that we can do in terms of value addition for this country, in terms of our gold, in terms of our cocoa, oil, and all of the other resources that we have. But it will take a leadership that is actually bold enough to say that we're putting our feet on the ground, we're building, and this is a strategy we are using to build this particular country or economy that we want to see, and not just the patches here and there just to make things look good over a short period of time, and then we come back to another cycle of struggles, and then we end up going to a lot of work to do. Yes, I hope that we are able to do something along the lines, but yeah, that's who we are. I don't even know what to say, but I'm really grateful that you all listened to me, listened to us this morning right here on the Business Breakfast on Z. We're really grateful. We're back again tomorrow for some more interesting conversations. My name is Nitra B. Hammond. Until we meet again, please keep listening to Z101.9 FM. Up next is The Brighter Side with Jeremy Okoriamako. Ordinarily, I will end with World Greatest, but today, let's do a mind be yeah, if I'll see you. Bye-bye.